Hey, Forge fans. Welcome. It's the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. It is match day preview. Forge FC back to league play, which will be their sole focus for the remainder of the season. Bowing out in the Canadian Championship tournament in the semifinal. Hard-fought battle against CF Montreal. A 2-0 loss for Forge on it's Wednesday night now, and you know, if you listened, and you can go back and listen to the match in review, or you can watch it. I recommend listening, so you don't have to see me, but choice is yours. You know, it was a tale of two halves. Forge played a very strong first half. I mean, as well as you could have hoped. Away team, big underdog. You're facing it's the realities. The reality of this tournament is you are going to have different tiers of clubs playing in different tiers of leagues. And the only thing separating them, let's be honest, is money. The ability to spend more on players. And when you think about it, look what the CPL has done. The gap is not very wide. Financially, the economics of it, huge gap. Talent-wise, and at least just competition-wise, and how the two sides match up with MLS clubs and CPL clubs, the margins are razor thin, which speaks to the level of talent, the depth of talent, why the Canadian Premier League is so important and so necessary for the sport in this country and worldwide. This demonstrates it. The talent is there. It's just a matter of opportunity. And Forge proving that they can compete. Pacific proving they can compete despite losing in their semifinal against Vancouver. So, listen, it is what it is. The reality is Forge now can focus on domestic play. The objective is to finish in first place, right? That's its own trophy. And then getting a second trophy, and that is another CPL championship. It would be their 4th in 5 seasons. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, right? We've only played 6 matches in league play, but with the way things are shaping up, Forge in first place, 12 points, 3 wins, 3 draws. They have yet to lose a match. They are playing Atlético Ottawa, which kind of became their rival a little bit out of nowhere. It just kind of, it happened. They had some really close matchups last season. Then they got to the playoffs. They got to the final, and Forge won. They hoisted that North Star Shield in our nation's capital in front of the Ottawa players, fans. And that's the last time these two clubs have played in Ottawa. These two clubs have met this season in the quarterfinal of the Canadian Championship, and that was a Forge victory at home. But that was close too, because Forge got it done in PKs. These two clubs seem to play each other tight, and you'd expect more of the same. I cannot figure Ottawa out, and I'll explain why. And more importantly, I don't have to explain it all myself, because Gordon Smith, the voice of Atlético Ottawa on TSN Radio 1200, in our nation's capital, is going to join us shortly and help make sense of things. I'm going to tell you why I'm confused. Okay. A lot of turnover in the offseason for Ottawa, lost some very key pieces. And so I think the belief was that Ottawa would take a step back this season. Now, when you look at the standings, they have taken a pretty big step back. Yes, we're only 6 matches in. They're in 7th place. All right, they have just 5 points, just 1 win this season, and a -1 goal differential. Here's where things don't make any sense. Ottawa were as successful as they were last season, based on being very sound tactically, being very organized, very good defensively, incredible on the counter. Ottawa just found ways to win last season and rack up points. This year, they weren't going to be able to do the same because they were missing some key pieces. So you thought their defensive game would be there, but who would score their goals? Where would the offense come from after losing some of these guys? Here's what's confusing me, okay? Forge and Ottawa are dead even when it comes to goals per 90 minutes. Both have 1.33. They're near the top of the league. So somehow, despite that very disciplined, organized defensive system that Ottawa deploys, they're scoring more than they were last year. I don't know how. But here's the other thing. Defensively, they've taken a huge step back. Goals against per 90 minutes, Forge 0.83, right? Among the elite in terms of keeping the ball out of their own goal. Ottawa, they're giving up a goal and a half per game. That is why Ottawa's in 7th place right now. Now let's take this a step further. Forge on the road this season, 2-0, 2 clean sheets. Ottawa at home this season, 0-1-2. They have a -4 goal differential in 3 games at home this season. They're not getting it done defensively the way they were last year. And I think that there's an important aspect to this, because I think there's kind of a belief that when you playing that defensive, that if you want to call it that boring style of soccer, that low block, that sit back, wait for a mistake, and try to beat your opponent on the counter, it's not that easy to play, right? You look at it and you go, how does that take talent? You're just sitting back and waiting for a mistake and trying to beat them on it. Essentially, you're not in control. I think this proves that despite it not being the most entertaining brand of soccer, that low block, that compact defensive style that Ottawa plays, it's not easy to do. You need the right guys, and you need guys that will buy in. Will Ottawa get better defensively as the season goes on? Probably, and we'll talk to Gordon about that, because he knows the club better than anybody. I'm just going based on stats, right? I've only seen Ottawa play when they've played Forge, essentially. So we'll get some more insight from Gordon, but it's been a bizarre year for Atlético Ottawa. And Ollie Bassett, no surprise here, the captain, leads Ottawa with 3 goals. That's tied for the league lead, by the way. And Forge, in every match they've played, whether it be domestically in league play, whether it be in the Canadian Championship, they have used all 5 of their subs in every single match because, as we know, incredible depth, really depth that, things that don't make sense. In this league, you should not be able to carry the amount of depth and versatility that Forge have because of those roster restrictions. But Bobby Smirniotis and his team have done an incredible job, and the players have done an incredible job of buying in to the ultimate goal here and putting team first. And the only thing I wanted to bring up as well, I thought this was interesting. Plus minus per 90 minutes. This is kind of one of those, I'm a stats guy, and if you listen and follow the Forge Audio Network regularly, I'm a stats guy. I just found this interesting. Plus minus per 90. So plus minus, again, for those that don't know, if you're on the field when a goal is your team scores, it's a plus. When you're on the field while there's a goal against, it's a minus. I don't know that you'd be able to get. So the number one in the CPL right now, plus minus per 90 minutes. It's a little surprising in that, it shouldn't be. It's not a knock on the player at all. Ashton Morgan, again, quality player. It's not the player I'm surprised at. It's just 1.94. He leads Ashton Morgan, Forge FC fullback, 1.94 right now. He's the most productive player in the CPL when he's on the field. I just thought that was an interesting stat, right? One of those obscure ones that you kind of have to dig to find. But anyways, credit to Ashton Morgan. Again, it's not that the quality isn't there. It's just you don't necessarily expect, a left back who really hasn't played a full 90 frequently, and maybe that factors into it. I don't know. Listen, I don't know. We don't need to dissect it too much because stats are stats, and sometimes they don't paint an entire picture. But there it is. There is the most productive player in the CPL right now. On both ends of the pitch is Ashton Morgan. So, something to follow, I guess. Okay. Enough of the stats. We need to figure out what is going on with Atlético Ottawa. And we saw them once this year at Tim Hortons Field. What can we expect at TD Place in Ottawa, a club that has not won at home yet this season? Let's bring him in. Here's Gordon Smith. Hopefully you can give us some answers, because I can't figure Ottawa out this season. What the inconsistency, the kind of up and down, has that kind of been the story this year so far for Atlético Ottawa?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, through six games, 18 points, you've only got 5. You're sitting down tied at the bottom of the CPL standings, and you're coming into such a huge game against Forge this weekend, where they seem to be coming fast and furious. And it is a huge game. I like to talk about, things being massive here in the nation's capital with regards to all things Atlético, but this really is something that has to be corrected and sorted out very, very quickly. And as we've talked about in previous broadcasts with previous interviews, Anthony, I just think Carlos Gonzalez right now is struggling with his best 11, and he's struggling with his best setup, whether it's 4-1-4-1, 3-5-2, 4-3-3 that was so successful at times last season. I mean, you look at Bobby's setup, I mean, the names just roll off the tongue, don't they? Henry, Becker, Jabrapur, Sissoko, Passius, Morgan. I mean, it's just non-stop with regards to, he's got his best 9, maybe even 10, and he just makes that final little tweak to make sure for specific game to game, whether it's defending better or whether it's trying to get a bit more pace up top. I think that's where, a team like Forge definitely makes a huge difference against other clubs throughout the CPL. I think Pacific's starting to get there, but it's all about Forge in Ottawa this weekend. And with regards to Atlético, the fan base is starting to get quite a little bit concerned, because from week to week, you just don't know what you're going to get. We've had the highs of that 5-0 win against Vancouver, and you've had the lows of some of the other performances we've seen in the league so far in 2023. So it's a huge game. Obviously, 3 points on the line for both teams. Forge at the top against Ottawa tied for last, and something has to give. But you take out those 5 goals, though, that Ottawa has scored against Vancouver. I think that only gives them 3 in the other 5 games. We're hitting the quarter stage of the season after Saturday's game. So if you, out of 21 points from 7 matches, if you still are stuck at 5, even at 6, questions are really going to have to start being answered very, very quickly. We talked about the transfer window not opening for another, I think, 4 or 5 weeks or so into July. We don't have that natural 6 yet that we are sorely missing right now, because we've seen in the last couple of games, starting with a back 4 of, basically 4 central defenders. Neva McDonald, Luke Singh, you've had Espejo, and you've got Ouimet. So that's, lads you would consider two centre-backs, or at least 3 centre-backs. To be playing 4 in a flat back 4 is I don't know. It's just one of these things that you're rolling the dice and hoping that something comes up trumps, because right now it's just that it's a real concern that you are down at the bottom when you were expected to be up at the top challenging. And the more that you let Pacific and Forge and Cavalry, I suppose, to a certain extent, stretch away from the other 5 teams, the longer this season goes, to fill into those 5 spots, I'm sure Ottawa would rather be at the top for those 5 than the bottom fighting for that last one.
Yeah, you bring up those 5 goals Ottawa scored against Vancouver, and I guess that solves one, because I looked at the stats, because I haven't had a chance to see Ottawa play that much this season, and I'm seeing that they're essentially scoring at the same rate Forge is per 90, but of course it's lumped because of that. It's very top heavy because of that one game. But I mean, defensively, this is a club that has lived and died by their shape, by their patience, by their discipline defensively. And I think that it's interesting, because a lot of people look at that style, that compact, that low block, and they look at it as kind of like, maybe it's easy to play. It's easy to sit back and kind of let a team come to you. But this kind of proves that you still need quality to be able to defend the way Ottawa did last season. Is it an issue of personnel this year?
Well, I mean, you lost Drew Becky, and you lost that 6 in front with Sissoko last year, and they were 2 major, contributing factors to such a solid back line. Nathan Ingham obviously is injured this season. Ingham's, and I don't think Sean Melvin has done anything wrong with regards to, the way he's played or anything like that with regards to his team in front of him. But, when you lose one of the top 3 goalkeepers that were up for the award last season, and you've had to go now a long stretch without him. It does upset the chemistry a little bit, but I think it's just a case of not being able to find that best fit right now, that best 11, that best back four or best back three. And one of the things for me is Miguel Acosta has had to move into the 6 role. And I don't believe that's something he's really comfortable with. I think he's far more comfortable as an out-and-out right back, maybe in a possible wing back if you want, Anthony, or even playing on the right side of a back three, because he's a wonderful tackler. I think he led the league last year in tackles. And I just think his game's lost a little bit when he's being asked to do more in the central of the defensive line, as opposed to being out a little bit wider where he may be a little bit more comfortable. So there's a lot of factors possibly kicking into why it's been such a poor start for Ottawa. But all you can do is pick your starting 11, get across those white lines and hope they're able to get the job done in the 90 minutes and come away with 3, which really very, very important points. Because, Halifax is playing out west. I think it's Pacific they've got this weekend, I think on Saturday night after Ottawa's game. And if they pick up anything and Ottawa doesn't, again, Ottawa's sitting rooted to the bottom of the CPL. And that is a sight that absolutely no one expected, maybe outside of, Ottawa. There was 1 or 2 people that were thinking, Ottawa might come back down to earth. But we have talked about the loss of, Tabla, Brian Wright up top, Sissoko certainly, and Drew Becky. And again, players have come in, players of quality have come in, Anthony, but right now they're just not gelling as well as that team did last season. And it certainly is showing, not only on the field, but certainly in the standings as well.
Yeah, and it's the other time. I mean, Ottawa also they haven't won at home this season. And,
right.
We've talked about how important it is to keep the fans engaged in this league, which is still, maybe we can stop calling it a new league, but it takes a long time for something like this to get off the ground. Yeah. So even in that sense, when you say it's an important match, even just to be able to pick up points at home in front of the fans, that alone should at least present some urgency this Saturday.
Well, you would certainly hope so, right? Anytime you play in front of 4, 5, 6,000, in earlier cases, the first game of the season over 7. You certainly hope that you're able to perform. The lads are able to feed off the energy of the crowd and will them forward to get the result. But in the end, it's about Bobby's 11 against Carlos's 11, possibly into 12, 13, 14 as the match goes on. And who's going to perform better on the day? And I think over 12 games, lifetime, Forges won 9, Ottawa's only won 1 with 2 draws, and that's just not good enough. And I get, outside of, up to last year, the first 2 or 3 seasons of Ottawa were just feeling their way around this league, and they were on some big losses and hammerings. But last year proved that, you've got the system, you've got the tactics, you had the personnel to get the job done. This year, maybe the system, maybe the tactics just haven't been as good a fit with the lineup that they've been able to put out here in 2023 as opposed to last season.
Your impressions of this Canadian Championship tournament, which comes to a close for the Canadian Premier League teams anyway. Just your thoughts on, we're, and this is going to be an ongoing thing probably forever, for as long as, MLS and CPL are around, these are measuring stick games for a lot of fans. Just your thoughts on the performance of these CPL clubs who came out on the losing end, but certainly showed that they can compete for long stretches against these MLS clubs.
Yeah, I think Pacific and Forge, obviously, last couple of years anyway, have been the teams that have been sort of carrying the torch for CPL. And, we look at the game last night, we can maybe look at the Pacific game a little bit later, and that horrific injury that was suffered. But you look at the Forge game last night, I thought for the first half they were well in it. Didn't create an awful lot with regards to attempts or shots or anything, but, things were sort of half under control with regards to you going at 0-0 against an MLS team, irrespective of who they've got in their lineup. It's an MLS team. And second half, I thought Montreal just turned it up a gear, and Forge were on the back foot for most of that game. And, once the first goal went in, lucky deflection, yes. Second goal, poor defense, possible defensive mistake, you could say. But at the same time, Montreal really, I think, just did show the pedigree that an MLS team brings to these type of competitions, especially a one-off. You think back to when the Fury, they won at TD Place. I believe it was against Toronto. They won, it was 2-0 or 2-1 in the first leg, and it was like, we're in with a great shout here. And then they went to Toronto. I believe they got hammered something like 4-0 in the second leg. So I think a two-leg situation gives the CPL teams possibly more of a chance, because there is an opportunity to be at home. And if, you're able to get to Tim Hortons and Forge are able to maybe, even if it's a 1-0 loss or a 2-goal loss to Montreal in the first leg, you may have an opportunity to, really sort of try to put Montreal on the back foot on the second leg. So it's a competition that's needed. I mean, obviously we do need it here in Canada, and we would like to see the CPL teams do a little bit better over the course of the tournament and over the course of the years to come. But I think it is a good measuring stick for, the Forge and the Pacifics and even the Ottawas at some point when they're able to, get their act together with regards to the Canadian Championship. So I'm certainly in favour of it. I just think right now the MLS squads are too big. Their season has come a little bit earlier. They're obviously they're more into their season than our lads are, than our teams are, and I think that does reflect a little bit in the score lines as we look at a 2-0 and a 3-0 loss for CPL teams against MLS teams last night.
Yeah, fair enough. Gordon Smith, I haven't looked at the schedule. I don't know the next time Ottawa and Forge play, but I think we have a bit of a break, so it won't be we won't be talking every week.
Hopefully we get a bit of a break. We're sick of seeing these bloody orange shirts in front of us every time. But no, listen. In this league, you have to measure yourself against the best, and the best has been proven to be Forge over these first 4 seasons. And it's a situation where every single team that wants to get to that level knows they have to perform on a regular basis against Forge. We saw it last year going into the final. Ottawa was coming in very, very confident. They were on a high. They'd had a great couple of games against Pacific, and unfortunately just came out flat. And I think a lot of that was down to how Forge played on the day, how Coach Bobby had set them up, and that really took Ottawa out of their rhythm and out of their sort of normal way to play. And you get behind that first goal, it's going to be massive. And of course, on Saturday, that first goal, especially if it's an early goal, and if it's for Forge, the fans might start to get a little bit if it's for Ottawa, though, the fan base is going to start really getting behind this team even more so, Anthony. So fingers crossed we get another spectacle of a game, and we're able to see lots of goals and maybe one extra for Ottawa than it would be for Forge come at the end of the 90 minutes.
Well, you will be there. You'll be there live, and you'll be calling the match for TSN 1200. Yep. So, and
it'll be a fantastic afternoon. It's supposed to be like 25, 26 degrees, Anthony, temperature-wise. So we're really looking forward to the nice weather as all across the country as you start getting into some good weather, and hopefully the crowds are going to start to get up. Because as we've talked about before, I mean, there are certain markets that far outperform others with regards to attendance. You look at the success. We talked about the success story down in Halifax every single time. And I think if they are ever able to, match the success off the field as with on the field, it's going to be one hell of a success story out there, that's for sure. But you've got to hope that York starts to get a little bit better on off the field as well with regards to attendances, and a couple of others that maybe need to just make sure that, you're inching closer to that 4,000 or 5,000 mark to really put a stamp on this success. Being in it for the long haul, we talk about it's the 5th season, and that's fantastic, and it's great that we've gotten through 5 years, but it's the next 5 years that we're all looking forward to, and making sure that we are going to be around for 5 more years and hopefully even longer.
Yeah.
And it's all about getting bums in the seats, Anthony,
Well, and it's one thing, it's easy to attract fans when you're winning, but, only one team can win a title every year. So, are the other clubs, is it enough to be, if you're a middle club or just a fringe playoff club, it's kind of, that's when you worry, is it enough to be able to bring fans? Because you can't always make the argument that, well, if this team starts winning, the fans will show up, but there's no guarantee.
Of course.
And half the league isn't going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So there have to be other ways to be able to bring fans into the stadium.
And I just wonder if that's partially the reason why we went to 5 playoff teams this year instead of just the 4. I mean, I understand, I would prefer a top 4 and we just leave it at that, but we've gone to 5. So now, as you get to late on in the season, you are going to have more games mean more, possibly right up to the last couple of games of the season, as opposed to maybe 3 or 4 weeks before when we know who the top 4 is going to be. And then that just plays out and you've got a lot of dead rubbers as the season sort of peters out to an end. So maybe with 5, you start getting the teams that are in 5th, 6th, and maybe even 7th now are still going to be in there the last few weeks. And as you said, success, winning does bring hopefully more people out. And like we said, if you're not bringing wins, you better be selling hope. And that's something that, a lot of teams are going to be hoping to get into those top 5 playoff spots come October.
Awesome. All right. Gordon Smith, it's been a pleasure as always, and I'm sure we will speak again.
Thank you, my friend. It's terrific chatting with you as always, and good luck to both Forge and Atlético this weekend. And if any of the Forge fans are coming up, make sure you bring your suntan lotion because it is going to be a fantastic weekend here in the nation's capital.
All right, Forge faithful, 3 keys right now. Forge FC looking to pick up 3 points in Ottawa. Key number 1 for Forge FC. Forget the finesse. There is something lacking this season in the Forge attack, and that is that final touch. I feel like it's a broken record now, but it needs to be repeated. The lack of that clinical finish, that lack of that quality and that final touch. It's not there. A 14.55% goal conversion rate for Forge FC right now. Not good enough, despite the fact that they lead the league in shooting accuracy. They are hitting the target 50% of the time. That leads the league. They've been leading the league in that stat for weeks now, but they're not translating into goals. So it's time to forget the finesse. Don't try to place it. Don't try that perfect touch, that perfect play. Sometimes when things aren't going right, the term in hockey is gripping your stick a little too tight. You start overthinking. You try to be a little too cute. Forget it, right? Bear down. Fire the ball. Listen, we've seen this so many times. Forge were unfortunate in their last match in the Canadian Championship against Montreal. Bad deflection ends up in the back of their goal. The point is, it was a shot on target. And sometimes you try to be a little too cute when things aren't going your way. Forge needs to forget the finesse, bear down, and just strike it. Strike it, clear your head, hit the target. Key number 2 for Forge FC. Hunger strike. They got to get hungrier inside the area. We've seen this a lot. Over the years, this year, no exception. Teams are forcing Forge to play wide. They're playing compact. They're taking away the middle of the field. Now, if Forge is going to be given that space, it's time to get better, more clinical, and hungrier in the area on some of those crossing plays. You know you're going to get opportunities. You can guarantee it. There are going to be so many opportunities for Forge, for their wide guys to deliver the ball into the area. It's up to the guys in the area to get hungrier. Sometimes that's all it comes down to. The quality's there with their strikers, with their attacking midfielders. There's no shortage of quality there. They have the length, right? They have the big guys, the horses that can get up and get to it. And at the end of the day, sometimes it just comes down to who's hungrier. It's time to get hungry for Forge FC. Key number 2, hunger strike. Key number 3 for Forge FC, middle mastery. Now, here's when you have to add some nuance to your game plan here. On the flip side of things, Ottawa, dead last in their cross success rate. 20%. Only 20% of their crosses are finding teammates. So here's the difference. Forge is being given that space. They have to take it. If you're defending against Ottawa, you're also going to give them that space because the difference is Ottawa does not have the same quality that Forge does inside the area and with guys that can get up and get after. And also, Forge is stronger defensively. They have the guys that can clear, that can win those duels in the air. If you're Forge, force Ottawa to beat you from the outside. Let it be a cross. If it's going to be some wacky bounce or scramble, hey, it is what it is. It's bad luck. Do not let Ottawa beat you in the center of the pitch. How many times have we seen guys like Ollie Bassett making a living for Ottawa, scoring through that center channel? If you're Forge and Ottawa's going to score goals, force them to do it by building from the outside and with plays through the outside. Do not give them anything in the middle. That's why middle mastery is key number 3. All right, I think we're all set. Saturday, 2 o'clock. All right, TD Place Stadium, Forge, Ottawa. A lot of memories in that stadium for Forge FC, a lot of positive ones, and they're hoping to deliver once again. Okay, that's it for me. Enjoy the match.